Paralyzed, burned, poisoned, slept, and frozen. With your powers combined, we are non-volatile status conditions. Ho! One of the hallmarks to Pokemon, status effects, have all been around since the original games, but they've undergone a great deal of changes since then, and hopefully will continue to be changed as new generations come out. Paralyzed reduces the Pokemon's speed stat and causes it to have a 25% chance to be fully paralyzed and unable to use a move. From Generation 1 to 6, its speed stat was reduced to 25% of its normal value. This was nerfed in Generation 7, so the speed is only reduced to 50% of its normal value. Burn inflicts damage every turn and halves the attack stat of the Pokemon. In Generation 1 and 7, Burn inflicts 1/16 of a Pokemon's maximum health each turn. From Generation 2 to 6, Burn inflicted damage equal to 1/8 of its maximum health each turn. Regular poisoning inflicts damage each turn. In Generation 1, this damage was equal to 1/16 of a Pokemon's maximum health each turn, but from Generation 2 onward, it was increased to 1/8 of a Pokemon's maximum health. Badly poisoned, from likes of Toxic, causes 1/16 of a Pokemon's maximum health for each turn they've been on the field, meaning after 4 turns you take a quarter of your health in damage. Sleep prevents a Pokemon from acting as they snooze the battle away for a varying number of turns. Sleep lasts for a randomly chosen duration of 1 to 7 turns in Generation 1, 1 to 5 in Generation 2 to 4, and 1 to 3 turns in Generation 5 onwards. Freeze causes a Pokemon to be unable to use moves. Frozen Pokemon can still use the moves Fusion Flare, Flame Wheel, Sacred Fire, Flare Blitz, Scald, and Steam Eruption while frozen, causing the user to thaw and execute those moves. If a frozen Pokemon is hit by a damaging Fire-type move, Scald or Steam Eruption, it will also be thawed. From Generation 2 onward, frozen Pokemon have a 20% chance to be thawed each turn, possibly even thawing the same turn they're frozen. However, in Generation 1, a frozen Pokemon never thawed on their own. Pokemon cannot be frozen in harsh sunlight, created from the likes of drought or sunny day as well. Personally, I find Burn and Toxic perfectly fine as they are now. Burn punishes physical attackers and poison wears down Pokemon over the course of the game. Regular poison is almost unused except from additional effects such as Sludge Bomb, Poison Jab, or Poison Touch. Toxic is just vastly superior to regular poison damage, as after 3 turns on the field it pulls ahead in raw damage, meaning you're forced to swap to reset the Toxic giving a free turn, or die quickly to gruesome Toxic damage. What if we could turn regular poison into Toxic poison through a second stack function? Similar to Toxic Spikes where one layer inflicts regular poison, a second Toxic poison. A second stance of poisoning could increase the level to badly poisoned. It's just a thought, and more than likely Toxic will keep its limelight as the premier poison. Toxic accuracy was dropped to 90% in Generation 5 and given perfect accuracy in Generation 6 to poison types. Will-O-Wisp is the particular spell for inflicting burns, with an accuracy of 75% until Generation 6 where it was bumped to 85%. While status effect itself is perfect, giving Will-O-Wisp the bump to 90% base accuracy and letting fire types have a perfectly accurate version seems fitting. While his move is mostly learned and used by bulky ghost types, it might be more viable for fire types to run if the risk of missing is removed. Although Heatran does exist. Paralysis, notably from Thunderwave, I feel has a similar track record. Perhaps it's just my desire for uniformity, but Thunderwave was 100% accurate until Generation 7 decided to make it 90%, while also cutting the speed drop to 50%. Electric types with perfectly accurate Thunderwave would be fantastic. However, I don't like how Paralysis works. With a 75% chance to act each turn and 25% chance to give a free turn, both sides have to prey on pretty large odds. Pokemon has always had an aspect of luck, but a 27% roll in giving a free turn is fairly huge. I feel Paralysis should emphasize the speed advantage. If you've never heard of the move Quash, it's a dark type move that forces a Pokemon to move last within its speed group. This means that a Deoxys speed that's been quashed that turn would be outsped by Shuckle if they're both going for spikes. On top of that, Paralysis' fully paralyzed turn should be both predictable and reliable. Just as Toxic tends to force a swap every 3 turns to prevent it from racking up, every 3rd turn the Pokemon acts under Paralysis will be fully paralyzed. This means if Rotom washes Thunderwave's Tapu Bulu on the Switch, Bulu has 2 turns to act before being fully paralyzed. If, however, Rotom washed Thunderwave's Como-O on the field, and the Como-O attacks that same turn, that's 1 turn of Paralysis used. When turn 3 strikes, however, fully paralyzed. This equates to actually 33% fully paralyzed, but it's consistent if left on the field. And sometimes it can be played around, thankfully, though. The effect of Quash is a huge buff to paralysis for that ability to play around it being fully paralyzed. Sleep is a tough one. Smogon went so far as to ban putting more than one of your opponent's Pokemon to sleep at a time. Game Freak has nerfed sleep twice over the generations, but it still remains incredibly strong. Any of the ideas I come up with just aren't as satisfactory as preventing more than one Pokemon being asleep at a time. From letting sleeping Pokemon lose sleep turns and thus wake up even when not in the battlefield, to always being asleep a set number of turns instead of variable, I just don't like any of my ideas for sleep mechanics. Now, Freeze is the absolute worst, and it only occurs from secondary effects. Now, first off, ice types are pretty bad competitively. Kyurem Black is the only overused ice type, with the Alolan Ninetales and Weavile making the UU ban list, meaning they can only be used in OU. I bring this up since the ice type is the only type unable to be frozen. Therefore, every Ice Beam and Ice Punch, which are common coverage moves, have a 10% chance of ruining your day. 10% is a fairly high number for a move that gets used frequently. Freeze needs its first status move. I'll call it Deep Freeze. Let's say 75% accurate, which is equal to Lovely Kiss, the second best accurate sleep-inducing move, and make it learnable exclusively by ice types. Except for Jinx. You already have Lovely Kiss. No, bad. However, it also needs to be more like Sleep. Therefore, it's now just the second Sleep. Ice Sleep. While Sleep Talk and Snore won't work, Freeze can still be worked by Scald and the various fire moves, meaning swapping in and predicting the Deep Freeze is just as important as predicting the Sleep for competitive, and possibly will give some ice types better viability. This also means you will not end up having a Pokemon that is frozen the entire match, which is possible right now. The last thing I'll touch on is confusion. I hate confusion. It's like paralysis except you hurt yourself. It also has never made sense to me. In the anime, oftentimes confused Pokemon will attack randomly, use moves that are uncalled for, but they don't sit there and just punch themselves. The easiest change is just to make confusion like struggle in regards to damage and not have it scale with your attack stat. A set of percent of max health. I suggest 1/8. This makes it better against walls and special attackers, and worse against physical attackers who would often commit suicide when confused. My ideal change would be to have a confused Pokemon randomly use one of its moves. Not only is this thematic, but it shifts the punishing effect towards utility and defensive Pokemon, who want to use their specific moves more often than a general move. Full-fledged attackers might prefer to use one move over another, but any attack, slight explosion, is better than hitting themselves. Generation 8 is still 4 months away. Many of these could be implemented, none of them could be implemented. A better idea could be made. I do not know yet, but I do know Team Sobble represents, and I'll see you all in Galar.